Hello friends, and welcome back to another video. Apologies if you can hear cooking. Dinner is being prepared. So today I'm going to be talking about the books that I've read in August, and it was quite a successful reading month. I read 10 books in total, and a variety of different genres. Yes, so I would dive, oh gosh, I was just getting excited with my pens. I would dive into the genres. So I read 5 that classed as fantasy, 1 that was science fiction, 1 that was non-fiction, poetry or memoir, 1 that was literary, 1 that was mystery, thriller or horror. And then in terms of the audience or demographics, I read 4 that was YA, 2 that was middle grade, 4 that was adult, and then pretty much all of the books were contemporarily released, so newer stuff like this not century, I don't know, this basically just current. In terms of like formats and stuff, 1 book was from NetGalley, 8 was physical, or rather 9, did I not write that right? 9 of them would have been physical. 1 was a backlist book, 4 was new releases, and 9 was hauled recently from 2020 onwards. Okay, I do apologise that we've had to vacate the living room. Yeah, I didn't realise stuff was going to be sizzled, and it just, I don't know if it was just me that felt like it was too loud because I was right next to it, but I felt like if I can hear it, surely the camera can pick it up. Anyway, as I was saying, so yeah, 10 books read, really happy with those. I participated in 3 buddy reads throughout the month, which was awesome, and I'll let you guys know my thoughts on those books as I pick them up. But for now, let's just jump into the reviews. So the first book I finished in August was The House of Many Ways. This is the 3rd and final book in Diana Wynne-Jones's Howl's Moving Castle trilogy. You guys may have known that I've been doing a reading vlog for each of these books, so of course I've done a reading vlog for this one as well. This one will be coming out, I think I've scheduled it for the 12th of September, so do keep an eye out if you're interested in hearing more deep thoughts about this. I ended up giving this one a 3.5 out of 5 stars. This one was released in 2008 by HarperCollins, and it's a middle grade fantasy set in the world of Howl's Moving Castle. This is following a young girl called Charmaine who has a very sheltered upbringing in life. Basically, her parents don't let her do anything because everything just seems to be unrespectable, so all she does is read all day, which sounds like the life, but then she's actually limited in stuff that she can do. So she can't even wash up, she doesn't know how to take care of herself, she can't do, you know, menial tasks around the house, and she's set to basically housekeep for her uncle or great uncle, blah blah blah, who's actually a wizard. So he's been taken away ill, and she just gets up to all this mischief in her wizarding uncle's home. She also has a separate plot where she's going to work in a library, a royal library, and it's just so many fun things going on here. But as I say, I have already done a review on this as sort of sorts because I was talking about it in my reading vlog, so as I was reading, so definitely check that out if you're interested. Next up, this was the first buddy read I finished during August, and I read this one with Read a Book Gem, and I think we've both put this as like a favourite book for us of this year, and I think possibly for all time. We both very much enjoyed this read, and I've also got a separate dedicated review coming out for this in September. Basically, I forgot to mention my birthday is on 13th of September and I'm turning 25, and I thought, it's a big number. Yeah, maybe I should do something exciting for it. Not necessarily doing something super exciting, but I'm just having a week of daily uploads for that week, and so there's going to be a lot of mixed content, some book stuff, some gaming stuff, some music-y stuff, just some fun things. A lot of those were pre-scheduled anyway, so I thought, well, let me just put them all up in this week, just to kind of celebrate, you know, the turning of a quarter of a century. And so that's why I keep alluding to this particular week, because that's where most of these videos that I'm talking about will probably be. So yeah, stay tuned for that time. It starts on Monday the 6th, I believe, and then carries all the way to the 13th, which is a Monday as well, I think. So anyway, I digress. The book that we both loved was The Mermaid of Black Conch by Monique Roffey. This was phenomenal. So I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars, of course. It was released on the 10th of June 2021, so it's a new release to this year. It's adult literary, but also I would class it as fantasy and historical fiction. It can fall under quite a lot of different categories, and it's published by Vintage, but originally it was published by People Press in the Caribbean, I believe. So yeah, absolutely adored this one. I'll give you a brief synopsis about it, but I won't give you my thoughts because I've already done a review for this. So the island of Black Conch, a fisherman sings to himself while waiting for a catch, but David attracts a sea dweller that he never expected, Howdee-haie, an innocent young woman cursed by jealous wives to live as a mermaid. When American tourists capture her, David rescues her and vows to win her trust. Slowly, painfully, she transforms into a woman again. Yet as their love grows, they discover that the world around them is changing and they cannot escape the curse forever. Ah, absolutely beautiful, heartbreaking. I'll leave it there because I know I'm just going to start going on and on and on about this. Wait for the video. Next up, just for a different kind of medium, I picked up 2 graphic novels. And the first one out of those 2 that I read was Oktoberfection Volume 1 by Steve Niles and Damien Worm. I had recently, well, I say recently, I think it was last year, I watched the show that came out on Netflix, and I very much enjoyed the TV show. So when I realised that it was based on a comic series, I knew I eventually would want to get to it. So I purchased these on Vinted, so they came in a bundle, really affordable price. Anyway, I ended up giving this a 3 out of 5 stars. This was released on the 6th of August 2015. It's horror YA, published by IDW. Meet the Allen family, Frederick, his wife Dolores, and their 2 children, Joff and Vivian. As Frederick works to put his monster hunting days behind him, his 2 kids insist on joining the family business, but ghosts from the past refuse to stay dead, and conspiring forces lurk in the shadows. I love the concept basically, and that's why I wanted to seek, you know, its original source after loving the TV show. But yeah, we've got this monster hunting family, these gothic weird kids. It's just a vibe basically. The whole aesthetic of it is very pleasing, very enjoyable. I adored the art style of this. Let me show you a page that doesn't spoil anything. Like this particular colour palette here was really stunning. Here again, oh, it just uses colour so beautifully. Yeah, I really just loved how the colour palette that was supplemented in some of the pages just really complemented dark tones of the story, but also of the rest of the palette, you know. And again, I absolutely loved the concept of the story. But in terms of comic reading, I feel like it felt rushed, and it might not have made a lot of sense had I not already been familiar with the general plotline through the TV show. It's rare for me, but I think that the TV show actually did it better. I would be intrigued to pick up other volumes because I don't think 1 volume's enough for me to gauge how I feel, but so far I definitely prefer the show. Next up, this one was a massive disappointment. I'm absolutely gutted that I didn't like this one. So see if you can guess what it is. Right, so it was released in April 2015. It's fantasy YA, published by Image Comics, and it's written by Julian McKelvey, Wilson and Cowles, and it is The Wicked and the Divine, Volume 1, The False Act. I'm so gutted. I've been wanting to read this for ages, I feel like, and I finally did, and it just was not what I was hoping for. So basically every 70 years or 90 years, gods are kind of reincarnated on Earth as pop stars and famous people and stuff, and they basically give the world inspiration, I guess. That's kind of like the concept. So yeah, every 90 years 12 gods return as young people. They're loved, they're hated. In 2 years they are all dead. It's happening now and it's happening again. Again, this had a very cool art style. Like, I really loved these pages where you was going to the next issue were absolutely stunning. And just generally, like, it's a bit of a graphic, maybe won't show that one, it's a bit violent. Yeah, it's just really beautiful to look at, but I don't know if this is just me, but it made no sense. Very disappointing, because it just felt like there was no plot. I was just reading it to kind of read it. I didn't know what was necessarily happening. I didn't connect to anything. All the ideas of this, you know, the gods coming back to Earth to spread inspiration as famous people and celebrities and stuff, that sounds like a cool concept, but I don't think it was really explored. And this is another thing I think will be better explored perhaps as a TV show, because something just wasn't clicking, unfortunately, and I'm less likely to pick up the next volume of this, unfortunately. Okay, so next up is the second buddy read that I finished during August, and this was actually a carryover because I was supposed to finish it in July, but we both ended up carrying it over because it's such a chunky one. And I buddy read this with Deborah from Hills of Books, and that is The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. This was a behemoth of a book to get through, but we have done it, and I feel accomplished that this is now something that I have read, because it's been looking at me for the longest time. I heard nothing but awesome things about it, and I just wanted to be in the know. I wanted to know the world. I wanted to kind of see what all the hype was about, so I'm glad that I've finally got this off of my TBR and actually have it in my itinerary of things I've read. Specifically epic fantasy. Yes, this one I gave a 4.5 stars. It released in 2019 by Bloomsbury Circus, and it's adult high fantasy, and it's a standalone, which is awesome. This is a very complex plot. It's got quite a few different threads that gather together, but basically it's got dragons in it. It is about I don't even know how to describe it. There's just so much going on. There is the west perspective, and then there's the east perspective, and you're following two kind of main storylines from those, but there's just so much interwoven. So from the east perspective, you're following Ede Durian, who is a kind of lady of, what is she, a chamber, no, what do they call her? She is a lady in waiting, and she is basically there to keep an eye on the queen of the realm, Queen Sabram, protect her from threats basically. And then in the east, if I said this was the east, I was mistaken. So the west is, I'm making it more confusing than it is. The west is with Ede. In the east we have Tanae, who is she's training to become a dragon rider, and that's where you get the most kind of interesting dragon perspectives. Anyway, it's just this epic journey, basically trying to stop the uprising of the Nameless One and this band of evil dragons. And there's just political intrigue, like there's lots of stuff happening, and I've not sold that to you in the best way at all. I apologise, but it's a deep, intense plot that I can't really summarise in a few sentences personally. So what I liked about this, it just felt very epic. I loved that we had this intense story all in just one book, and yeah, it was a cool feeling. We have a fantastic cast of characters, and the plots themselves were very complex, and it just enriched with well explored, I find, and clever historical context. Again, with the politics and the relations between people, and everything was just so entangled and well explored. I do think that this could have been shorter, and I know that might be sacrilege to some people, but I just found that there were some things that were just slogged through, and it could have been edited down just a touch more. And I definitely struggled to keep up with the time span and just the timeline in general, and specifically when we'd jump to the perspective in a different part of the world. I wasn't sure how much time had passed since we'd last been with that perspective, and in relation to the perspective that we've just read from. So there was a few things that probably made this drag out more than it needed to be on my behalf, but also I do find that it was just too long. Nevertheless, glad to have read this at last. Said I read 3 buddy reads. I actually read 4 because this next one was more of an impromptu one with my friend Maria. We've been wanting to read this book together for ages, and I think she's finished now. Yeah, I'm pretty sure she's finished now. And we just decided, I posted that I was reading it and she was like, oh, let me read with you. Anyway, that book is The Evolution by Giovanna and Tom Fletcher. This is the sequel to The Eve of Man. This one I gave a 3 out of 5 stars. It was released in 2020 by Michael Joseph, which is Penguin imprint, and it is YA sci-fi / dystopian. So basically in Eve of Man, I've got a full dedicated video if you're interested. It's based on Earth, set in the future, where in the last 60 years only one girl has been born, and she's kind of like viewed and not worshipped necessarily, not in that sense, but viewed as like the saviour of the world. Everything she's done is kind of broadcasted. It's almost like The Bachelor sort of vibe, like everything, reality TV, all her milestones, everything like that is just for the world to see and to hype up and kind of get into this sense of this is going to be the one when she makes her pairing, she's going to produce offspring, she's going to produce the next wave of girl children. And yeah, it's much darker than that. This one definitely sees an even darker story still, so I did quite like that, I would say, although it did throw me off a little bit. So yeah, it was very fast paced and it definitely was a quick read. It was action from the get-go, it felt like, so I was definitely enthralled in that way. And I also, as a character development part, I really enjoyed Eve's growing strength and leadership skills, but it was very predictable for me, and I just feel like I enjoyed the first book more. Next up, I have a book that I read through NetGalley, and that was Beach Read by Emily Henry, which I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. This one released in 2020 by Penguin and is an adult romance. And this one I really adored. So we're following January and Augustus, and it's basically a summer holiday kind of vibe. They have known each other in the past, but they are kind of like literary rivals. So we've got January, who writes more like women's fiction, I think she calls it, and then Augustus writes literary dark sort of crime novels. And they both got a bit of writer's block going on, and they decide to switch genres for like the summer and try to outdo each other in their different fields. And obviously it's a romance, so romantic tendencies ensue, and it was just so much fun. I really loved this one, so I fell in love with the characters and the story in general. It just made me feel so much, and I was constantly laughing, and yeah, I absolutely loved the romance. The one thing that I didn't like too much was January's overuse of calling herself a dumb bunny like that. It was just very cringy and I didn't know where it came from, and it made me kind of uncomfortable to read. I was like, what 27-year-old calls herself that? Even in her head, that just seemed a bit strange. But there's that. Really enjoyed the book nevertheless. Random one that I'm just going to speed through because nobody really cares about this one, but I read this. This is First Aid at Work by John Marley and Christian Springer, which I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. It was released October 2017 by Highfield Products Limited, and it's non-fiction. I just classed it as adult. It's basically what it says on the tin. There was a week where I was learning first aid for the first time, and this was the book we were given, and it helped me pass, I guess. Yeah, easy to follow, easy to comprehend, helpful illustrations and photos, Exhibit A, and yeah, very helpful. Nice to kind of flick through again if I want to refresh, I guess is the word. I don't know what I was looking for there. The last buddy read that I read during... Oh no, that's a lie. How many buddy reads did I read? 5. I read 5 buddy reads. Interesting. Okay, so 2 more than I initially thought. Anyway, the next buddy read that I read was Beyond the Kingdoms by Chris Colfer, and this is the 4th book in the Land of Stories series. 2 more left to go now. I'm reading these with Kat from Kat's Reading Corner. This one was released in 2015 by Little Brown and Company, and it's a middle grade fantasy. I feel like I've talked about this for the past 3 months. So I'm just going to skip over what it's about and just briefly tell you my thoughts without spoiling what this particular story is about. But yeah, I loved the idea of other stories being included in this one. I also enjoyed seeing the other world still being implemented as a plot as well, and I found this one very gripping. I do feel though that it tried to do too much at once. I just feel like there wasn't enough focus on trying to keep track on the amount of characters that we had, because we were following quite a large cast of characters in this particular book, and it was almost like the author had forgotten at times and would randomly give them something to say, and it's like, well, if you've forgotten, I've forgotten, they're there, you know, they're not really adding anything to this particular adventure. Also, there was some weird humour around pregnant people, and I don't know what it was trying to do, but it just felt like unnecessarily offensive. It was just a lot, just kind of distasteful. But anyway, in terms of the actual story, I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. Okay, so the last book I read, and also the last buddy read, we managed to read this one a little bit.
Do you want an armpit?
Yes, please.
Garlic?
Yeah.
2 each or 1 each?
1 each. We managed to finish this one just before August ended, even though we were scheduled to finish on like the 3rd of September, but it's nice to have it kind of wrapped up for a new month. And that is Witches Steeped in Gold by Shannon Smart, and I read this with Deborah, again from Hills of Books, and I'm gutted, right, because as soon as I heard this, it had everything that I was expecting to love, like witches, Caribbean fantasy, all these things. I thought, wow, it's going to sound awesome. And I assumed it was going to be a 5-star prediction, and unfortunately, although still a good rating, I only gave it 3 stars in the end. This one was released this year and is YA fantasy, published by HardcoreCupcakeHailstorm Books, and we're following like this Caribbean inspired island. Let me just read you the back because I feel like it gives you more content. Howdee-haie has spent her life in a cell. Heir of an overthrown and magically gifted dynasty, she was exiled from the island nation of Oktoberfection, but every day brings her closer to freedom and vengeance. Jasmine Carriot grew up dressed in gold with stolen magic at her fingertips. Daughter of the self-crowned Doyeni, her existence is a threat to her mother's rule, but Jasmine has no intention of dying. Sworn enemies, the 2 witches enter a deadly alliance to take down the women who threatens both their worlds. But revenge is a bloody pursuit, and nothing is certain except the lengths Howdee-haie and Jasmine will go to win this game. So it sounded epic, and I just feel like it didn't deliver what I was hoping, and I'm gutted. So it's definitely got that rich characterization and the political intrigue. Like, there is so much in here that just I wanted to sink my teeth into, and as I say, it ticked everything that I wanted going into it, but I just felt like I was completely lost, and like there should have been like a prequel or something for us to get all the history that we needed to know before going into this, because I felt swamped and I felt like they're talking to us in a way that we know these characters already, and we don't. Yeah, I also feel like a more extensive glossary would have helped as well. There were some romantic thoughts between some characters that felt very random and misplaced, and I didn't understand their timing, like I couldn't see what they were seeing, you know. And yeah, there's just, it's gutting because she seems like an awesome writer. This definitely has amazing potential. This is a debut, and I'd be interested to read more by her, especially if it is in this world. So maybe like, you know, next books will be more fleshed out and so, but I just feel like it was very ambitious, and which is great to have ambition, but it just missed it. It just wasn't as, I don't know, there was just something, it just wasn't doing it for me, unfortunately. So before we wrap this video up, I just quickly want to say that my favourite book of the month was The Mermaid of Black Conch. Absolutely loved this one. Stay tuned for that video review when that goes up. I will link it to this video as well for your ease. Anyway, let me know if you've read any of these books I've spoken about today and what your thoughts are, if they're on your TBR. I'd love to know. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.